her Twitter account. I know that she had one, but she wasn't very active on it. She was more active on her Snapchat and Instagram. And she also used her Facebook account some.
And can you walk me through how that morning started for your family, as far as what happened that morning?
Yeah, so that morning I had woke up a little late and I had planned on going to my boyfriend's house before work. We had went downstairs and my dad had made breakfast for the girls and I was sitting there eating with them. And a little while later I had started to get ready and Libby walked into the bathroom and asked me if I'd take her to Highbridge, and I had told her no the first time. So she continued out on her day. She went downstairs and they were working on a desk that Libby was painting and finishing for her bedroom. And they were helping my grandma with some like sorting paper folders for her work. And then a little while later she came back up and asked again, and I had told her that if she could get a ride home, I would take them.
So you agreed to take them if they got a ride home?
Yeah, so as soon as she could get a ride home, I would drop them off.
Yeah.
Now, did she ask your grandmother for a ride first?
I do not know the answer to that. From what I know, I think that the agreement was that if Dad would pick her up, she could go.
And then, so eventually she does get a ride lined up with your dad?
Yeah, so she had told me that my dad said he would pick her up.
And I guess she had called him or texted him, or did she speak to him in person?
He was already gone, so I'm gonna guess that she had called him.
And then what time approximately did you leave to take the girls to the trail?
We arrived at the trail at 1:35, so we probably left the house at 1:25. I don't know how long it takes to get there. I just know what time I got there.
And did you see any people? I couldn't remember. I thought we asked you, but I can't remember.
That morning or afternoon when I dropped the girls off, I did not see people. I had known that there were people there. Chase's younger sister was actually there and had just left after I dropped them off. And so I knew that there had been kids in and out, but I didn't see anyone at the entrance when I dropped them off.
Why they chose to go to the trails that day? Did they have any specific reason?
They didn't have a specific reason. They just wanted to go out and do something. So going to the trails was something that I would do often with Libby, and so she just wanted to go there and hang out. We had the music up really loud and we were singing to the songs that were on. We were just enjoying the drive there. It was a nice day out, so we had the windows down. They were just ready to go out and have some fun.
And so you got there at around 1:35 p.m. and dropped them off, and what was the last thing you saw as you drove off? Did you see them walk into the trails, or what did you see when you left?
When I left, I actually waited until the girls had gotten a little ways away from me and I couldn't see them much anymore. And at that point, I drove away. I didn't see anything after that.
So what time were you supposed to go to work?
That day, I was supposed to work at 4:30. So when I got the call, I just called them and told them I couldn't come in.
So you leave, and where did you go when you left?
When I left the trail after I dropped them off, I went to my boyfriend's house, and then we were gonna do a couple things and then get ready for work.
So you had to work later that day?
Yeah, I did.
And so my next question is, you're out doing some stuff with your boyfriend, you're expecting to go to work. When and how did you find out that the girls were missing?
We had finished cleaning out Chase's truck and we had went to lunch, and we had just gotten back to Chase's house when I had put my phone on the charger and Chase was getting ready to leave. He worked at 4 o'clock, so he was leaving a little bit before me. And Chase was getting ready to leave. He worked at 4 o'clock, so he was leaving a little bit before me. So my phone stayed on the charger until after I was done showering and getting ready. And so I walked downstairs after Chase had left, and I left my phone over there. I didn't think anything of it. So I was watching a movie with Chase's dad, and I heard my phone ring the first time, but I figured it was just one of the robocallers, like always. I heard my phone ring the first time, but I figured it was just one of the robocallers, like always. So I waited a little bit, and then it rang again. And usually if my phone rings 2 times in a row, it's usually my family. So I went over to my phone, and I picked it up and called my grandma back. And that was around 4:12, and my grandma had said she hadn't heard from the girls, and she was wondering if Libby had sent me a text or a Snapchat or anything to let me know that something was wrong. Like, they just needed to figure out where Libby was. And then at that point, that's when we were starting to get a little worried. It'd been a couple hours, and nobody had heard from them, so we went to the bridge and started searching.
Okay, so and did Chase's dad bring you, or you just drove there yourself?
I drove there myself.
Okay, and then you wound up calling out of work and not going into work at all?
Actually, I called off work and I told them I would be in later that night. I called off work and I told them I would be in later that night. I did end up going to work for about 10 minutes before I had to go back into the police station.
Okay, because at that point, your family called the police?
Yeah, so we went out to search and we weren't finding anything. And I didn't want to stay at the police station and freak out the whole time. So Hay had asked if I could go to work and just work until somebody had information that I needed to know. So I went in probably around 5:30, and I stayed there for a little while, and my grandma called me to tell me I needed to come back.
So they knew something was wrong and the girls were lost, at least.
Yeah, so at that point, somebody had said that I knew where the girls were, and so they wanted me to come back in so they could question me.
And when you initially went out to search, before you went to work, when you said you were going to be a little bit late, how many people were out there searching? Was it just you and your grandparents, or?
Yeah, so the first time I went out, when I got there around 4:15, my part of my family was already there. I don't remember who. I'm pretty sure it was my dad, Tara, my uncle, and my grandma maybe. Yeah, we were all out there, and there were some other kids out there. But other than that, our family was the only people out there searching.
And when you didn't find anything or see any signs of them, that's when they decided they were going to call the police.
Yeah, we were probably out there for about an hour looking around, and when we couldn't find them anywhere we thought they could have been, we knew that something was wrong.
So later on, I guess a bigger search got organized with a bunch of different people, and you went out searching in that group as well?
I did not search later that night. Once it was dark out, I stayed in the police station until around 10 when I went home. I went through stuff and tried to find stuff that would help law enforcement. The night before, they were actually painting in their room after having a girls' night. We all kind of hung out downstairs. We were watching movies with some of my friends, and it was just a really good night. And that's kind of how it always was when Abby was over.
February 13th, so it was a Monday, and that Monday morning, the girls had school off.
So that day, it was kind of a last-minute idea for the girls to go to the High Bridge. Highbridge is a part of our trail system that a lot of people go and they spend time there. That's where we would go to take pictures. We would go there just to see the beautiful scenery that's around. That day, they had the day off and they knew that they wanted to do something, but they didn't know what, whether it was stay home or go with me somewhere. They didn't know. So that morning they actually helped my grandma with some business stuff, and they painted a little bit, and my dad had made them breakfast that morning. And while I was getting ready, Libby came upstairs and asked me what I was doing that day. And when I told her I had to work and I was going to Chase's house, I told her I couldn't go with her, but she wanted me to take her. And so I told her no, not that day, maybe another day. A little while later, I told her that I would take her if she could get a ride home. And Grandma said yes. So she was asking Grandma and she was asking my dad, and they had both said it was okay and that my dad would pick her up later. And so that's kind of what led up to her going, was the fact that they wanted to do something on their day off. They just wanted to do something fun. They wanted to get out of the house. They didn't want to be there all stuck in the house on the day off of school. It was nice. Another thing I remember was eating breakfast with her that morning. My dad had made banana pancakes and we sat there and we ate, and that was our last meal together, and I'll never forget that.
So to be exact, Kelsey dropped the girls off at 1:35 and then she left because she had plans with her boyfriend.
So that day, I dropped the girls off at around 1:35. I watched Libby walk away after telling her I loved her. She said it back and I made sure they both had sweatshirts. So they continued to walk and I drove away. After I dropped them off, I called Chase and told him that I was on my way. Chase left a little bit before I did. He had to work at 4 and I was working at 4:30. Chase left a little bit before I did. He had to work at 4 and I was working at 4:30. So there was a little bit of a gap, and so I had a little time to sit down and watch a movie with his dad and hang out until it was my turn.
The girls were supposed to only be hanging out there for a few hours. They were supposed to be picked up by Libby's dad at a certain location at 3:30 p.m. However, when 3:30 rolled around, Derek came to pick them up at the exact spot they were supposed to be, and they were nowhere to be found.
4:12, I got a couple calls from my grandma. I didn't hear my phone go off the first time, so the second time it went off, I knew something must have been. A couple calls from my grandma. I didn't hear my phone go off the first time, so the second time it went off, I knew something must have been wrong, because my grandma never calls multiple times unless she really needs something, especially if she knows that I have to go to work that day. So I picked up my phone and I called my grandma back. And the first thing she said was, "Have you heard from Libby?" And that was the hardest moment, I think, of that particular day. After we heard, I called my work and told them I was going to help search for my sister. I got in my car and drove to Highbridge. At the moment, I called my grandma and told her I was on my way. I could hear the scaredness in her voice, the amount of hurt that she was feeling. I called my grandma and told her I was on my way. I could hear the scaredness in her voice, the amount of hurt that she was feeling just knowing that something was wrong. And that's kind of when I knew, like, there's something happening. Like, I don't know where the girls are. I don't know where Libby is. I haven't heard from her. I was confused. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know what to say to my family. After I had told my grandma I was on my way, I arrived at the bridge. It was probably around 4:30, I'm assuming, based on when I got the phone call. We were gonna go to the trails and look and see if we could find the girls ourselves. Like, our main thought was they must have fallen, dropped a phone, maybe they got lost in the woods, they wandered off a little too far and couldn't find their way back. So at that time, me and my uncle crossed the bridge. We got down to the private drive and we were walking around, yelling their names, trying to find out where they might be, hoping that if they had gotten hurt, they would just yell back and say, "Hey, we're over here, can you help us?" At that point, we hadn't heard anything. So we headed back. We decided that it was time that we got a hold of the police. It was starting to get dark. We knew that they needed help. Every possible situation was going through our brains, and we never thought we would end up with the outcome we did. We got a hold of the police. Finally, my grandparents went to the police station. Knowing the area, I knew areas that the girls would have went if they were going there willingly. So going around those areas, I was able to help them go to spots that I knew Libby would have been if she wanted to be there. Soon after that, search parties started to form of people in the community. People were coming from all over to help us. They were coming from different cities. They were from our community. There were people going out there from other states, I believe. There were just people from all over there searching. Later on that evening, I believe around midnight, the search was called off for whatever reason. They said it was because of the safety. The terrain was really rough and rugged, and they just didn't want people to get hurt. They didn't want to have to put their resources into helping other people when we needed to find the girls. That was really defeating, knowing that the search was called off. I went home to try to sleep, and I didn't get any.
Lafayette, 1427, 1042.
1427.
Lafayette, 1451, 1042. Signal 54, reference last detail.
1451. District 14 units, attend to locate 2 missing juveniles. Attend to locate 2 missing juveniles. Liberty Rose Lynn German. Liberty Rose Lynn German. Date of birth 12/27/2002. 5'4", 200 pounds. Blonde and blue. Subject was last seen wearing a tie-dye shirt that is fringed at the bottom. Gray sweatpants with black writing and black shoes. Last seen at the High Bridge in Delphi, Indiana, at approximately 1300 hours on 2/13/2017. Second juvenile, Abigail Joyce Williams. Abigail Joyce Williams, date of birth 6/23/2003. 5'4", blonde hazel. Subject was last seen wearing a gray zip-up sweatshirt and a red shirt with a red shirt under it and jeans. Authority, Sheriff Carroll County.
We got up the next morning and we headed out to look again. We were all put into groups, and then I was put into the group that actually got to cross the bridge, and the others stayed behind to look on the wooded area that's over on the other side. I knew exactly what shoes my sister and Abby were both wearing. So as soon as they yelled up what type of shoe it was, I knew exactly whose it was. It wasn't long after they told us that they'd found the shoe that a searcher found the bodies of the girls. It was countless interrogations. In the beginning, I trusted the police a lot. There were times I got really angry because I felt like they were interrogating me more than anyone else. And at that point they probably were. I was the last person to see the girls. So I was gonna go with them, but then I had to work, so I was not able to. So I dropped them off. I said goodbye, told Libby I loved her, made sure they had sweatshirts. Abby and they both actually had my sweatshirts, so that was fun because then I didn't have one. Then I drove to my boyfriend's house and sat with him while we were both getting ready for work. And while we were there, Chase had finished getting ready, and he had to go to work an hour before me. And since his house was closer to work, I just stayed there and waited. And I sat there with his dad before work, and I got a call from my grandma. She actually called me twice, but I didn't hear my phone ring, so it was on the other side of the room on the charger. My grandma. She actually called me twice, but I didn't hear my phone ring, so it was on the other side of the room on the charger. And I got up because I saw that the screen was on and checked to see what it was, and I called her back. And she asked me if I had heard from the girls, and I said no, I haven't seen them since 1:30ish when I dropped them off. And she's like, okay, well, Libby's not answering her phone and your dad's there to pick her up. And it's 4 o'clock, so he'd been there already for probably an hour. And I said, okay, do you want me to come down there? And she said, yeah, that would be awesome. So I called work and told them that my sister was missing and I needed to go help find her. they were totally fine with it. They told me, do whatever I had to do. I can come in after, because we were all sure we would find them on the trail somewhere. And so we did that. I went down to the bridge. They were nowhere at the beginning of the trail. My dad had been there looking. He was yelling for them. He tried calling the phones over and over again.
And at this point, you're really kind of not as worried as you later become, but like you were just starting to kind of, all right, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. We assumed that they had been like fallen and broken a leg, or Libby had dropped her phone somewhere and wasn't answering. So we just guessed that they were out in the trails somewhere there looking. Honestly, I have no idea how many people were there. I spent most of the evening at the police station because I didn't want to be down there searching at night. I'm really scared of the dark, so I wouldn't have went anyway. And then I went back the next day. So I'm sure there were a lot. I know a lot of my friends were out there looking. A lot of my family was out there. A lot of my community was out there. So I'm sure a lot of people were out there searching.
Yeah, you were there searching for a part of the time though, right?
Yeah, so before we contacted the police, I was there. I crossed the bridge and looked on that side. And then after that, I actually went back to work and then ended up at the police station.
But I think I should give you the truth.
I remember we had woken up. Actually, I don't think Abby and Libby ever went to bed that night. They were up just giggling, laughing, doing all kinds of stuff in Libby's room, watching movies, doing arts and crafts together, whatever they could do to enjoy the night together. And that morning, they were up before me, I think, and I had to get up and get ready for work like a big kid on their day off. And I was getting ready to actually go to my boyfriend's house first. I was going to go hang out with him before I went to work. And she opens the bathroom door while I'm sitting there doing my thing. And she's like, "Kelsey, do you want to go to Highbridge? We can go hang out." I'm like, "No, I have plans today. I can't." So at first I just told her, "No, maybe another day we have off, or maybe another weekend." And a little while later, she came back and asked again, and I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll take you if you can find a ride home." Then after that, I'd finished, got ready, and I got in the car, told them it's time to leave, and they came out and got in, and I drove them to Highbridge, where I saw them for the last time. And Libby got out of the car and told me she loved me, and that was the last thing she ever said to me.
And explain to me what Highbridge is, the area, and if someone has
many years. It's very tall, like, you'll love it. I had been at my boyfriend's house. I was actually sitting there. He had left for work already, and I was finishing up getting ready. I didn't have to be there for like 15 minutes. I had been at my boyfriend's house. I was actually sitting there. He had left for work already, and I was finishing up getting ready. I didn't have to be there for like 15 minutes. But there wasn't any reason to go back to my house, which was a little farther away, and then come back. So I just waited there with his dad and his sister. And I heard my phone ring once. The first time I wasn't super worried about it. I was getting ready. There wasn't any need to like rush to my phone. But when it started ringing several times after that, I was like, well, something must be going on. So I went over and grabbed it. And it was my grandma. She was frantic, but that wasn't really anything new. She was already that overprotective parent. So I was like, okay, what's going on? And she said, well, we haven't heard from Libby. She's not answering your phone. Your dad's there to pick her up. He's looked everywhere. He can't find them. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure they're just lost or their phone died. I'll be there in 10 minutes to like help search. So at that point, I called work and said, hey, my sister's missing. I can't come in. I have to help search for her. It's more important than making $7.25 an hour. At that point, I called work and said, hey, my sister's missing. I can't come in. I have to help search for her. It's more important than making $7.25 an hour. So I ran back, got in my car, and went down to High Bridge, where my grandma and Tara and my dad were at. We started walking the trail to see if we could find them. At that point, we weren't super worried. We weren't super worried. Like, my grandma was freaking out, but the rest of us were like, it's going to be fine. I'm sure they just fell or their phone died and they're off adventuring in the woods somewhere and we're going to find them. They just like broke their leg or something normal happened and it's going to be all right. So we went searching. We didn't see them anywhere where I thought they would be. We didn't see them on the other side of the bridge, on the like driveway over there. So we just kept searching. We're like, they have to be here somewhere. So we kept yelling their name. Eventually me and my uncle went back across the bridge and told my grandparents they weren't anywhere. We didn't see them anywhere. So they ended up calling the police. And that night we were in the police station for a long time. Search parties were all over. There was social media posts. Everybody was out looking for them and trying to figure out where they were, what had happened. But it wasn't until the next day that we knew what happened. That day, I was out searching. We got to the bridge. My group kind of went separate ways because, like I said, the bridge is terrifying and nobody wanted to cross it. But I knew that if that's what I had to do to find them, I was crossing the bridge. So I went across with my little group of people and we searched for a while. And around 12:30, that's when they yelled up the hill that they'd found a shoe. And then eventually found the bodies a little while later.
Happy, tramp and feel